It's Dr. Tony, your board certified physician, certified executive coach. And I want to make sure I'm talking to my professional women about a very common misconception that comes up all the time. We have a topic that's going to be very helpful for many of you who have been putting your head down and doing the work. So I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. But let's just talk about what happens when you are trying to get to the next level and you're not 100% sure. So we need to talk a little bit about self-esteem and a little bit about self-confidence, and they are not the same thing. So I'll give a good example of a real life client of mine who rock star, high level specialist, very meticulous work. Very few women do the job. Very few women of color do the job. She happens to be both. And she wanted to try something new based on some planning that we had done. She's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I feel confident. Okay. I don't want to do it. I don't want to try new things. I don't want to do public speaking, basically. And it was a social media campaign. Okay. And the job wanted it. She wanted it, but she really didn't like the idea of being new at something and trying something new in that capacity because she's used to being the expert. How many of you are used to being the expert who knows exactly what's happening next? There's very little risk involved. You've practiced 100,000 times. So when it's time for you to show up, you know how to bring it. You know what to do. You've rehearsed it and you have looked up all the different answers to the questions that people might ask you. Okay. Tell me if you're an expert. Type it in the chat if you are used to being an expert, right? So many people who follow me or work with me definitely are, but only in that box. So she's like, well, isn't self-confidence and self-esteem the same thing? So I had to use her skill in her day job to explain that that's not the same thing. Self-esteem is how you feel inside. It's secret. Nobody knows about it. Self-confidence comes from that work you do on the outside. So it can get better as you go along. So one myth I hear all the time is like, oh, well, some people are just more confident than others. You can build confidence by showing up. You can build confidence by interacting with the world. So if you hide out and just practice and prepare and read and make 1,000 checklists, which is what a lot of people do who are nervous to be scrutinized, judged, and out in the world, what will they do? They won't actually have more self-confidence when they step out because they haven't had enough feedback to feel like, man, after the 20th time, yeah, I don't have a problem with it, which is exactly what happened to her. When it was time to go out and be on these platforms doing live social media, live videos, little by little by little, not only was she better at it, but she started to own that. She started to do more risky conversations, more risky topics, and then gain traction for the project, for the work she wanted to do to reach the audience she wanted to reach, which is the junior colleague. A lot of mentors are not going to mentor you or they don't have time, but it's so important that we do that. So I was encouraging her to step out and mentor on the digital platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. There's a lot of places where you can put videos and information now, and the younger generation she's trying to reach is there. So there's a lot of upside to building your self-confidence, trying new things, but I want to talk about a few myths. So one myth is that you can't fake it. So let's say you're trying something new, you want to feel confident, but you don't feel confident yet. You can actually fake it. you can stand, there's some studies that have been done at Harvard and Columbia where you can just stand there with your hands on your hips for 2 minutes in the mirror and do the power pose. So in a power pose, you can start to see yourself as you are in the mirror, as a powerful woman ready to take over the world, as a confident woman. So you can actually fake confidence, if you can actually trick your brain into thinking that I got this. So, yes, you can fake confidence and not be 100% sure yourself. Um, some people think that in order to gain more confidence, you have to take a really big risk. So, using this client example, I said, well, first of all, why don't we just practice? Just you and I. Nobody's going to see this. Why don't we just practice right now? She's like, oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I'm like, yeah, but you know your material because you've been a mentor all your life. You know what you're going to say. You're just not used to saying it in this way. So we practiced. Didn't have to be a big risk for her to be improving herself quietly in the behind the scenes. Secondarily, when you're working on your own, you can practice the skill to build up your self-esteem, but your confidence comes from the performance. When other people will say to you, "Oh, great job." So, you can fake it. You can build it without taking big risk and putting yourself out there for the whole world to see. You don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be um, that big of a deal. And some people feel like in order for them to start something or step out or do something new, that it has to be, oh, I'll wait until I know everything. Have you ever done that? Oh, I'll just look that up one more time. I'll just prepare more. Analysis paralysis steps in as soon as you start questioning. And that's what, when I'm doing a conversation with someone, when I'm having a consult with someone and they start, backtracking all the things that they told me, I know it's because they're feeling under the microscope and scrutiny. But you don't, when they start asking all these questions that seem extraneous, they're not important. I'm like, okay, I understand that right now you're feeling stressed. You're not sure, but more information won't change it. So stepping out, getting going, taking the next risk, small risk at first if you need to, is going to help you get where you're going. But if you just wait until you feel ready, most people never do. And so I called out a friend of mine for reading like 20 books on something, but never actually creating this project. Oh, I just want to learn a little bit more. That's you worried that you're going to be under scrutiny, and that's an internal thing. So that's a self-confidence thing. I'm sorry, self-esteem internally, but confidence comes from you stepping out in the world and showing the world what you've got. So out of all the things you could do between self-esteem and self-confidence, I actually would recommend something a little bit different. Just focus on having the courage to get going. You don't have to be confident. You don't have to think a lot about it. You don't have to ask everybody what they think. You just need to take more of a courageous step, because confidence is typically built from you proving it to yourself, proving it to the world. Courage is you saying, we'll see. We'll see what happens when I take this leap. And I don't know. There's no guarantees. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how well it will be received. I don't know how it's going to feel. But if I were to choose between the two, I would actually insert the third one. Go for the courage. Go for the courage to do what nobody else would be willing to do. Go for the idea that you have that is worth serving other people. Go for the realization that the more tries you have, the more likely you are to get what you came for. When you're applying for a job, right? I was telling somebody wasn't believing me. We were having a conversation. We were talking in my group. We were doing some work on the burnout that many people are experiencing. And this lady was like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying. And I said, well, when you applied for that competitive job or when you applied for graduate school, did you only send one application? Yes, some people do that. But did you only send one application? And she was like, oh, of course not. I said, why not? She's like, well, the more opportunities I get, the more likely I'll get an interview, the more likely I am to be chosen or have the right fit for the program, because sometimes they have a great reputation but you don't feel like it's a good fit for you. So she's explaining to me all the reasons why you don't just try one thing one time and just cross your fingers, you may want to put in at least 3 or 4 applications. And that's the courage to face the rejection, but it's still low stakes. Nothing bad's going to happen just because you didn't get it the first time or you didn't make it the first time. But if you never take the at bat, if you never step up, if you never speak up, and if you never have the courage to take a step forward and throw your name in the hat, good luck getting chosen. Get luck getting where you want to go. And feeling good is not a requirement for doing good and performing well. So I know this is a lot for some of you who are hiding in the shadows, who do not want to talk about the things that aren't going well, and definitely think you want to do something new, but you're just not convinced that it's going to work out. Take the first step. Talk to someone in that department if you're thinking about going to school. Talk to one of their graduates if you're thinking about going back to school. A lot of my clients are talking about getting some new certifications or qualifications for new opportunities. So you can take a low risk step and just ask someone about their experience and say, I'm not sure what I want to do, but tell me a little bit about what you're doing. People love to talk about themselves. So don't inflate it and make it bigger than it is, and kind of pledge to have the courage in this year. This year, I'm going to have the courage to insert. So if you're watching this on replay, I would love to know what you're facing. That's the courageous side of you. And stepping out, doing something new. Is it trying a new city? Is it trying a new food? If you're not sure what you want to do, that's fair as well. But maybe you can start to think about it, start to research it, or at least reach out to somebody who's doing something different. I know some people who wanted to go non-clinical. I said, well, you should do a little bit of networking. And they were like, oh, I don't want to go online and start talking to people I don't know. I'm thinking you do it all the time. Your job requires you to talk to people you don't know. You're really good at that. Just reach out and ask people, hey, I would love to have a little conversation with you about what you like about your job and maybe some things that I didn't know about your job. So this is your year. Women are under so much pressure. We just had equal pay day and nobody's getting paid equally. And I actually had somebody reach out to me today that they got laid off. Well, thank goodness she had already started setting up some other consultations and doing other work. She's a PhD. And so she wasn't relying on the job, and she had been thinking about her exit plan. So they made that a little bit easier. And frankly, I called her and she said she was doing just fine. So if you can take those courageous steps before you have to, when something comes your way, when something stresses you out, you won't blow up. Your life won't implode because those little steps you've been taking internally, externally, and building up that confidence on the outside. She was like, whatever. I've been working on my own plan for quite some time now. So they're just giving me a reason to push it to where it's full-time instead of part-time. Hello. It's Dr. Tony. If you hear nothing else from me, bet on yourself. Bet on yourself and see what you come up with. Get some data before you ditch the project, and definitely don't get so much of it that you stop. The next topic we will have is brand, personal brand. There's a lot of people who do not know that you already have one. You know how I know? Because your company put you on the website. Clearly, they're already branding you and putting you in the world. Deciding what you want to do with your personal brand is going to be the difference between light years leap or just letting people decide what your messaging would be or what your values are. You shouldn't let other people speak for you. So it's a good idea for us to talk a little bit about how your personal brand can help you get where you're going a whole lot faster. And maybe you could do a little homework before we meet again. Talk soon. I'll see you next Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern Time. And just remember, everything we talk about here is to help you build the life you want out there and at home. If you take these steps with me, it'll be a whole lot easier for you to go for the things that you guys tell me in these consult calls. If you would like to reach out to me, drtonymd.com/talk. Let's see, you can get in touch with me as well. Have a great day. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, leave it in the chat.